Bang. Some say that Colonel Driskill himself wanders this hotel, accompanied by nothing but the smell of cigar smoke. Welcome, everyone, to the Driskill Hotel. It even smells nice, doesn't it? I love coming in here. Jesse Driskill was a very wealthy man, made a tremendous amount of money running cattle up the Chisholm Trail in the 1860s. There he is there. He made a lot of people in Austin very excited when he announced plans to build the finest hotel south of St. Louis right here in the city that he loved. It was a really bad business decision. Austin at that time was still very much a Wild West town, dusty roads, the occasional shooting. Basically, when this place opened with great fanfare on December 20th, 1886, no one could afford to stay here, and the hotel closed 6 months after it opened. That was the end of the Driskill Hotel. Mr. Driskill lost every penny he had on this place. He actually lost the hotel itself in a game of poker right around 1890. Died penniless that same year. So it was a sad end for Mr. Driskill. Fortunately, though, over time, the hotel developed a clientele and turned into the marvelous place that it is today. Welcome to the mezzanine level of the Driskill Hotel. You notice the beautiful chandelier-shaped thing that we were standing directly underneath when we were below. That wasn't always there. Originally, that was a balcony that led to the second floor here. There was a balcony above it to the third floor, a balcony above to the fourth, and a skylight at the top. What they would do is every morning open up the window at the top and let a draft circulate to the top, get the hot air out of the building. The Driskill was designed specifically to allow air to circulate throughout it without air conditioning. Through here was the main dining room. Through those windows, when the Driskill first opened, you could look out and see the Capitol being built up on the hill. The Capitol was 2 years away from completion when this place opened, and so it was pretty common for highfalutin residents of Austin to stand in this, have breakfast or lunch and enjoy the view of the construction to the north. I brought you up here, though, don't want to let you down, to tell you stories of a more spectral nature. And we're going to go someplace a little bit spookier for that. So if you would follow me right that way to the Maximilian Room. Mrs. Driskill, everyone. Pleasure to have her this evening, yes. Welcome to the Maximilian Room. Well, I'll give you the short version of this. You'll notice the amazing mirrors along the walls here. The room itself is named after Emperor Maximilian of Mexico. And he had a beautiful lover, a wife, Carlotta, of European descent, who he brought to Mexico to be his wife. Maximilian did everything he could for Carlotta, including ordering these mirrors specially from Austria, was it? Yeah. Straight from Austria. Now, they're very impressive today, but consider that they were made over 150 years ago. It was an impressive feat. Carlotta's bust looks down at us from the top center of every mirror. Now, emperors had a way of getting overthrown in the 19th century, and Maximilian was no exception. And so, in the political turmoil that led to Maximilian's downfall, Carlotta never got to see her mirrors. They disappeared and resurfaced in a warehouse in New Orleans, when in the early 20th century, a Driskill employee bought them and brought them back to this room here. And here we stand in the Maximilian Room. Sure enough, there are a few unusual things reported in this room where we stand. Some have looked in these mirrors. You can see the ones facing each other on opposite walls. If you look in the right way, you'll see the room reflected and reflected again, and your own self reflected multiple times. Sometimes people look at that reflection, and in one of the versions of the rooms, they see someone else standing there. On 2 separate occasions, people have been in this room alone or with very few people, and they have felt hands slowly touch their shoulders, only to turn around and find themselves alone. Nobody's doing that. Just kidding. I'll finish up the Driskill Hotel by telling you my favorite story about this place. This is actually my favorite story all night. 2 women shared their experience with us. They were in town from they were coming from out of town here for the Austin Comedy Arts Festival that they used to have in 1999. They decided, as long as we're visiting, why not splurge and split a room at the nicest place in town? So they checked in here. Now, upon checking in, they discovered that the old section of the hotel that we're standing in now was totally under renovation. They had to stay on the north end of the hotel, the tower built in 1930. No big deal, still the nicest place in town. So they checked in. They got back to the room at about 1 o'clock the next morning. They'd been out having fun. They realized that neither one of them was very tired, and one of them said to the other, "Hey, let's go exploring." Famous last words, right? So they left their room and they began to walk south along the 4th floor hallway. They went down 8 or 10 steps by the elevator and they crossed from the 4th floor of the north side to the 4th floor of the south side, right above our heads. Almost immediately, these women noticed a woman walking away from them down the hallway. And she was loaded down with shopping bags. It was like she had been on some huge spending spree. It's a weird thing to say for the middle of the night, a section of the hotel nobody's supposed to be staying in, but there she was. Yes. She walked down and turned and stood in front of room 427, right there in the corner. It was as though she meant to go in, but she wasn't really moving, just standing there staring at the door. One of the women thought she should say something, so she called out, "Hey, do you mind staying here with all this construction going on?" The woman paused, turned, and looked right at them and said, "No, I don't mind it at all." And at the moment she said that, there was this wave of just unwelcome energy that rushed past them. They got chills. They sensed that they had offended this woman, that they had violated her personal space. Each of them immediately felt the need to leave. So they said, "Okay, sorry," and they went back to their room, and that was the end of the evening. Well, the next morning, they mentioned this experience to the concierge, and he assured them, "No, ma'am, there was no one staying on the south side of the hotel." Well, they argued this point, and he finally went so far as to go up with them to the 4th floor. He walked with them down to 427. He used his master key, swiped the door, opened it up, and there was nothing. The toilet hadn't been installed yet. There was no bed. There was no way that that woman had been staying there. So that was the end of the woman's story. That's what they shared with us, and we thought that was pretty interesting. But what those two women didn't realize was the following. In 1989, 10 years before, a woman checked into the Driskill Hotel from Houston, Texas. She had been jilted by her fiancé over the weekend. He told her the wedding was off, he didn't love her, he didn't want to see her again. And so she took his car and drove to Austin and used his credit card to pay up front for a 5-night stay at the most magnificent hotel in town, the Driskill. They checked her into the nicest room they had available, room 427. The last time this woman was ever seen alive was walking in the front door at about 1 o'clock the next morning, loaded down with shopping bags. She had spent $10,000 of her fiancé's money in an act of ultimate revenge. The women always love this part of the story. She took all of her bags and she went to the bar. She had a Coke. The old bartender there still remembers her. She then went back to her room, to 427. She let herself in, put the do not disturb sign on the door and shut it, set down all of her new toys and pulled out the most important toy of all, her shiny new pistol. She laid in the bathtub, placed a pillow to her stomach, and shot herself there. The bathtub slowly filled with blood, and slowly she died. And because of the muffled sound from the pillow, and because of the do not disturb sign, and because Mr. Driskill, God bless him, put 18-inch thick walls between every room at his luxury hotel, no one heard the sound, and no one found the body for 3 days. It's a true story. Now, my favorite part about this story is not the first part, and it's not the second part. It's the fact that the women who shared their experience with us had no idea the history of that room. And yet on that night, 10 years later, they had seen the woman walking down to 427 with all of those bags, as she might walk down there to this very day, having nowhere else in this world to go. So that's my favorite story. Hope you liked it.